Hello, so welcome to another reading vlog. It is boiling hot and I am dying, but I wanted to start this reading vlog, so I think I'm cool enough now. The main thing that I'm going to be reading this week is The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. I did actually start this as part of a try a chapter thing like a year ago, but I have honestly forgotten a lot of what it's about. Something about a young woman or a young girl and her mother dies under mysterious circumstances. And so she gets summoned by her grandfather to this palace where the lives of gods and mortals intertwine. And I think her grandfather's kind of set her up as a potential inheritor of his position. And she doesn't really want to go, but she also doesn't really have a choice. I've loved a lot of stuff by N.K. Jemisin, so I'm hoping to like this, although it is one of her earlier works, so we'll see. But I do like stuff with gods in it, so I'm hopeful for this. And I remember liking that first chapter, even though it was a long time ago now. As well, I will also be listening to an audiobook I've got. I've forgotten the name already. You know, honestly, I looked it up just before I started filming. I think it's too hot and my brain is dying. The Fall of Koli by Carey. So this is the third and final book in the Rampart trilogy. So in this series, it's like a post-apocalyptic world where the trees have come alive and now sometimes they'll attack you and eat you. So as a result, humans are living in these small, isolated villages, and they do have some like tech remaining from like our times, or maybe a little bit superior to what we have, but they totally don't understand most of that technology. So kind of when they get to like 16 or something, they do this test to see whether the technology will wait for them. And primarily we're following this guy named Koli as he goes on a bit of a journey learning about like the technology and his world. So much has happened since the beginning of the first book. Something very exciting was set up at the end of the second book, so I guess we'll see what happens with that. I will say the second book didn't have enough of a particular character that I loved. I think if you've read the series, you'll know who I'm talking about. Also known as Dead Girl by a different character. Anyway, I'm hoping to get more of her in the third book and like see what might happen to her. So I'll be listening to that. And then as well, I have started volume 9 of Monstress. So this is a graphic novel series with absolutely stunning art. I'm up to chapter 52, which is like halfway through this volume. Actually, I'll show you the cover. I'll put the cover on screen. That's a lot easier. So this is a series basically about this world at war. Primarily, it's the humans versus the Arcanics. The Arcanics being half human and half ancients, which are like these animal gods. To be honest, they're humanoid too, so whatever. There's also these other like old gods that are quite like demony. And also cats who have these like necromancy powers, or like necromancers, and like the more tails they have, the more magical ability they have. And the whole series is so great in terms of its world building and its characters and its art and just the whole emotional journey that you're going through. I will admit volume 8 wasn't my favorite, but so far I'm loving volume 9, so hopefully that's how I'll feel by the time I get to the end of the volume. And I think that's all I'm reading this vlog. I've been trying to read less things at once because somehow in January I ended up reading like so many things and I didn't like it. So we're getting out of that situation. I don't actually know what else is happening this week, but I guess we will find out.
Lazy Sunday mornings, hiding under covers. I don't mind staying in with you. Play your favorite movie, laying right beside me. I don't mind when it's just us two. That corner coffee shop we like to go. Late night walks with you to take me home. With you I never feel alone.
These little songs make me glad to call you mine, and you have got my head in the clouds.
Hello, so it is time for a very red and sweaty vlog update. Also, plenty of cicadas as we always get outside now, and maybe some wind, although once again it's so hot that I'm not even mad about the wind. Like if I have to try and fix the audio, whatever. I'll probably regret saying that later. Anyway, ding dong. Why does it always ding dong? It's because it actually ding dongs here. Like the clock tower goes off every 15 minutes, so there's a high chance that whenever I'm updating here, it will go off. Anyway, I did want to say yesterday, since it was so hot, Jason and I decided to go out on a little bit of a bushwalk, and we went off a lovely little bushwalk, and then we were just looking on the map for other things that were around the area, and we saw this cave. So I'll put in, I don't know if I put it in earlier or I'll put it in now. So we went to this cave, and it's actually a really interesting place. Like, it's kind of horrible. You have to go along this little ledge to get there, and then you have to bend over when you're in there to walk around it, and it's kind of just like some rooms dug out in the clay. But it was built by this family, like in the times when the Europeans and the Maoris were not getting along. So, like, to simplify New Zealand history, originally the Europeans kind of came in and there was some kind of like getting along, and then the Maoris kind of got wise to some of the colonization bullshit that was going on, and there was a lot of conflict. So this family that was living a little bit out of the town was quite worried, so they dug this cave that they could retreat to, and it's got like gun ports near the entranceway, so like people walking along the ledge, they'd be able to shoot them as they come along. And even once you go in, there's kind of like a little gun port between the rooms, so it's kind of scary to go in it. And I didn't go into the very back room because I was too scared it was going to collapse, even though like it's been there like a long time. I think it's been like 170 years. Anyway, I thought that was really historically interesting, so I thought I'd share it with you. Anyway, let me also tell you about my reading last night. So I only read a chapter of The 100,000 Kingdoms, which technically I'd read before, although there were definitely a lot of details I'd forgotten. So we're following this girl. Her mother was the daughter of this like ruler of the kingdom, but her mother fell in love with some like lower noble, and so this girl's been raised like away from all of that. But now her mother has died, and I think her father's dead too, and she's been brought back to the main kingdom by her grandfather, who has declared her to be the heir. However, he already has 2 heirs, and when she's like, that seems like you've got too many heirs, what's up with that? He's like, well, you guys can just sort that out. And she's like, well, doesn't that mean that they'll probably kill me since they're a lot better resourced? And he's like, yeah, I don't know, I guess you'll have to work that out. So that's the situation there. There's kind of a reference to the gods of the world in that there used to be 3, but now there's only 1, and another one that may as well not matter, and another one has died, and then there's a bunch more gods now. It's still not really clear what's going on with that, but that's the bit I'm the most interested to learn more about. So hopefully when I get home from my run, I'll find a bit more time for reading. As well, on my run, I've been listening to The Fall of Koli. So I've just gotten to 15% where we're about to go into the other perspective. I was wondering whether... Oh, it's making a lot of wind noise right now. Yeah, editing me is going to hate this. But like, hot from running me, loving it. Anyway, The Fall of Koli. So in the last book, there was a second perspective introduced, and I was wondering whether we were going to get them. I can just feel that wind, and I hate myself for this. I'll try and protect you, but I know from experience that it doesn't work. So I was wondering whether we were going to get that other perspective, but we have. So I'm excited to get back into that. But then as far as Koli's perspective, so they've arrived in this new place, and there are these new people there, and there is definitely something off about these new people. And I've got a guess, which honestly was just confirmed at the end of the chapter I just finished. And I'm kind of loving it. It's again kind of this weird AI tech stuff, but of course Koli doesn't have the context to understand it, but it's still written in a way like that he's telling you his experience, but you also know kind of so much more than him. I'm loving it. As well, there has been like some really good lines. I think that it's quite well done in that it's just telling you this adventure kind of story, post-apocalyptic adventure story, but there are some nice like social themes woven into it. We do have one of the main characters is trans, and it's just mostly dealt with like very smoothly, gently, kindly. There were some bits in the second book which were kind of dealing with people being quite prejudiced against them, which I didn't like, but again, I don't think it was done badly. I think it was done quite well, and always from the main character's point of view, like, and it was very supportive. There was actually just a weird little bit of racism, which I'm interested to see where it's going to go with that, because it's something Koli just has no context for, so he's just confused about it. It was also quite a nice little line about how people always either don't want to talk about their gods or want to talk too much about them, which I quite liked. So just some nice little lines in there that I'm really enjoying. So I'm definitely going to be continuing that on the rest of my run. So I guess I will see you at home. Hello, so update time. I just hung out the washing, and while I was doing that, I finished listening to The Silence Factory, which I haven't even mentioned in this vlog, but it's an audiobook I was listening to, and I was thinking about DNFing it, but I decided, like, there were some things I was interested in, so I decided to keep reading it. So this is a story about the silk that can be made out of, like, spider webs, these particular spiders, and it makes everything around you silent, or at least on one side. On the other side, it makes this weird noise, which is maybe not so great, has some terrible effects. So we're primarily following kind of back in the past this guy who went to these like Greek islands to discover the spiders. We're following his wife as she is not okay with everything that's going on. And then we're also following this guy in the future who's kind of helping to market this silk as he deals with his own tragic past with his family. In both cases, though, what really ruined this book is that the men that these main characters are interested in are so transparently terrible person that it's just frustrating all around that these characters aren't even trying to do anything for these awful men. There were a few interesting things done with like what the silk does throughout the book, but not enough. And there was also kind of some effort at the end to look at, or to have the characters like overcoming like industry, the evils of industry. But still the main character was like, oh, but maybe he loves me, about this awful, like, powerful businessman who's caused a bunch of like evil things to happen. So like, it was fine, but the main reason I picked this up is because I really love The Betrayals by Bridget Collins. It had some really cool concepts, an amazing kind of angsty, romancy thing kind of going on, like kind of real dark academia vibes. I loved the vibes of The Betrayals, and nothing else I've read by Bridget Collins has captured that, so that's very disappointing. As well, I think on my way home from my run yesterday, I did get further in the Book of Koli. I should actually say, I'm listening to the Fall of Koli, not the Book of Koli. The Book of Koli is the first book. I'm listening to the Fall of Koli on Libro FM. This is my first time using Libro FM because I used up all my Audible credits and I thought, I'll try Libro FM. I like the way it does the thing where some of your credits or some of your membership fee can go towards a local bookshop and support them. And like, I just generally like the idea of not supporting the main monopoly in the industry. So I will actually leave my link for Libro FM down below, because if you enjoy Libro FM and you use my link, then I would get a free audiobook credit, which would be cool. Because I think so far the interface, the little app, is pretty good. It does give me a percentage, which is something Audible never does and always annoys me. So there's that. So I'm 34% of the way in now. And what I will say, I listened to that other bit of the other perspective, and I think in the second book, I always wanted that other perspective, and what Koli was doing was a little bit more boring, and so every time I go back to Koli, I'd be disappointed. Now it has flipped, and even though what's happening with the other perspective is interesting, it's kind of like back in the village that Koli came from, where I imagine everything's going to come full circle in the end. Like, that is interesting, but what's much more interesting in like kind of a really creepy, awful way, and like much more interesting with what's happening with the technology is what Koli's up to. It's quite messed up in some ways. I don't know where it's going to go with it, but I'm enjoying like the creepy AI factor to things. And just like the general post-apocalyptic feel of things. Also like young children acting in very strange ways. Oh, it's so good and creepy. I'm loving it. As well, I've been reading The 100,000 Kingdoms. Wow, I left this in the sun and it's like boiling hot. Maybe I should not leave it there. So 100,000 Kingdoms, I'm now up to page 74. So what's happened is she met her grandfather, and then she ended up kind of having this encounter with the gods. So actually, the history of things is that the sky god killed one of the other gods. There were 3 gods. The sky god killed one of the gods, and then the other god, he turned into a slave, as well as all the children of this god. And then he kind of made it so any of the descendants of this particular person, of which this girl's family is, any of their descendants can command these other gods. So these gods are basically slaves, but there's like a whole hierarchy of who can command them, or like who can countermand them, because if someone's given them a command, only someone higher in the hierarchy can like countermand that command. However, these slave gods seem to have some kind of scheme going where they could gain their freedom, and they are trying to use this girl as part of their scheme. Obviously, she still doesn't really understand anything of what's going on, but what I am actually really liking is there's a few hints in here that something weird is going on. Like the chapter I'm about to begin starts with, "How strange, I have only now realized that this whole affair was nothing more than one family squabble pitted against another." And there was another section, can I find it? Oh, the start of chapter 3, she said, "Should I pause to explain? It is poor storytelling, but I must remember everything, remember and remember and remember, to keep a tight grip on it. So many bits of myself have escaped already." So there's kind of just like a few little bits that take you out of the main narrative into some kind of like future looking back, kind of foreshadowing that maybe in the future she won't have a complete grip on what's going on. And that I'm really interested in. And I do also like these gods that she's gotten to meet. They're quite dark and strange, but also like quite desperate for their freedom. So I'm going to try and read some more of this afternoon. I do have a bunch of editing to do. I still need to bring in the washing once it's dry. But I think I don't have too much to do this afternoon other than read. But that video is going to take me a long time to edit, I think. So we'll see. He's the king. Okay, so I did not update you yesterday because I was dying of being a girl, but I'm feeling a bit better today, so I thought I would update you on my reading. I have made a bit of progress. I actually was planning today to just spend the day in bed reading, but then because I'm feeling a little bit better, I've been trying to like figure out the rest of everything I'm supposed to be doing. I've somehow ended up really behind on all my video plans again, even though a while ago I was really ahead. But again, I'm going to blame it all on my recent shopping that I've been doing and just like general celebration of having money again. But anyway, let me update you on my reading. So, The 100,000 Kingdoms. I'm now 176 pages in, just short of halfway. I'm a little bit conflicted about it. There are some things I'm really loving, like we're getting a lot more information about what's going on with the gods. There was even a chapter, I think, pretty much from the perspective or telling the perspective of this youngest god that was killed by the sky god. Like we've been given now a lot of history of the gods and the story, like it's becoming much clearer how the story is linking into what's going on with the gods. I do think the main character feels a little bit like empty, like, I don't know, I don't have a good feel for what kind of person they are. Now, there are some storytelling reasons why that might be the case. So like maybe it's not bad writing, maybe it's intentional. I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe, maybe not. It's a bunch of outside noises, which I don't know if you can hear them. Normally you can't, but I've left my windows open because it's way too hot to be closing my windows right now. So I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, with this, I'm definitely intrigued about what's going on. I will say, I think somebody said to me that this book, the romance, was kind of YA. And I was actually trying to remember, was it this book or the Dreamblood duology that they were talking about? I'm pretty sure it's this one. And it definitely is like that. I think it's more just like the romance. It's not really romance. Maybe that's part of YA romance. I don't know. It's not really romance, but there is something going on that just kind of feels unnecessary. Is that what's making it seem YA? I'm not really sure. Maybe it's the relationship without any kind of foundation, or the romance, let's say attraction without any foundation, Is that what's making it seem YA? I don't know. Anyway, we'll see how I feel about it as we go on. Again, it does kind of have an explanation within the story why it's like what it is. I don't know. But I am enjoying my time with this, I guess. I don't know whether some of my criticisms are going to stand or not. Then as well, I have been listening to the audiobook of The Fall of Koli. I even called it the right thing this time. So I'm 76% of the way through. And I will admit, when I got to the end of my run yesterday, just before I started dying. So the beginning of my run went straight into this very intense, emotional, like devastating section. And I was just running, but not. This is why I love audiobooks for running, because when the audiobook is really good, I'm not even paying attention to the fact that I'm running. I'm just running and my brain is entirely engaged in the book. And like it was so emotional that I was completely engaged, very devastated by what was happening, but also very in denial. And then kind of by the end of my run, we'd come around to like a completely different feeling. We weren't devastated anymore. It was really triumphant, and like it felt like we were really achieving things. So that was an emotional roller coaster. But I was thinking that this last 25% was gonna be some kind of like just an extended wrapping up of what was happening, because what was happening at the end of my run also felt like quite a lot like the end of the story. However, I've now thought about it and I've realized there's something else that needs to be sorted out. So I guess the last 25% is going to bring us back to that other perspective, and then there's a particular threat going on there that will have to be dealt with. And I'm hoping we'll get more like epic tech, as well as some trees. Like definitely in this series, there has been a lack of marauding trees. I went into this series expecting trees to be just killing people left, right, and center, and there has been some dangerous plants and dangerous trees, but I want more of that. So maybe we'll get it in this last 25%. But I'm loving this as well. So pretty good reading, really. Oh, I did actually finish something else. I finished Monstress, Volume 9. Definitely a big improvement on Volume 8. Like the story is a lot clearer. It's kind of come back to things, and we're learning a lot more about the war and the politics and the magic. There's a lot of like the factions scheming in different ways. It kind of felt a little bit like setup in this book, although there were some amazing scenes. And then like artistically, I felt like the art was also a lot better than Volume 8, which was a criticism I had of Volume 8. So I really enjoyed this volume of Monstress, and I am now very excited about the next volume. And kind of sad that I probably have to wait another year to read it. So I just got back from my run, and while I was out doing that, I finished reading The Fall of Koli, which means I finished the trilogy, and it was a really satisfying ending. Kind of it all came together into this intense final action, and for a moment I was quite worried about the ending, but it pulled off being something very satisfying. I would say maybe there's still a few things that I'm wondering about in the world, but I definitely think you get everything you could want from that ending. And there's definitely some interesting ideas in there about like the future of humanity and the future of AI and the future of the world. Like, I really enjoyed this series and kind of how humanity's relationship with technology is changing throughout the story. I don't know what else I can say without spoiling it, but I'm really glad I read that series, and it's another win for Carey. He's definitely got to be up there as one of my favorite authors at this point. As well, I did read a little bit more of The 100,000 Kingdoms. I'm now on page 238. I think the plot is definitely coming together in an interesting way. What's frustrating me is I still don't feel like the main character feels like a real person. Like, other characters keep making observations about what kind of a person she is, and I'm like, is she? They'll be like, oh, you've got a bit of a temper. Or like they'll say that she's full of hate. But none of her thoughts that we're getting, or like we're barely even getting any of her thoughts, but we're not really like, nothing they're saying about who she is represented in the narration of the book. And then we have kind of still all this weird romancy stuff that just, I hate it. It always feels like it comes out of nowhere, and I don't really feel like it's adding anything of value to the story. I don't know. I'm gonna keep reading this because I am definitely interested in the plot, but I think the lack of character development is stopping me from being like really engaged in it, but I am curious about what's going to happen. So I will hopefully finish this off today and tomorrow because that's my plan. We'll see if I can actually pull off the plan. Okay, so I have finished 100,000 Kingdoms. I have mixed feelings about it. There was definitely a good story in here, and there were parts of what happened that I really liked, like the actual concept of the gods and the general idea of what was happening there was really interesting. However, I still stand by the idea that the characters weren't fully developed. Also, kind of the climax at the end, I did understand what was happening, but I had to really think about it at times. Like, there's times where it's saying stuff and it's like, it's assuming you understand, but it's not written in a way that makes it easy. I think that's probably fairly typical of N.K. Jemisin's writing. Having now read the first books of both the Dreamblood duology and this trilogy, which are the things she wrote. I think the only two series she wrote before she got to the Broken Earth trilogy. I'm pointing over there because it's somewhere over there. Oh, it's windy, but I also don't want to close the windows because it's so hot that I'll die. You guys don't want me to die, right? Anyway, that's editing me's problem, even though she will hate me for saying that. So Broken Earth trilogy, definitely. It's still kind of the same thing where it's sometimes hard to figure out what's going on, but there's like so much going on and it's so cool the way that it's written that it kind of is something you can overlook, or at least something I can overlook. With this, because there's that whole romantasy element that doesn't make any sense, it means I'm not as willing to overlook the weakness in the writing. And as well, I just don't think like the themes in this were quite as strong. Even compared to the Dreamblood duology, the first book of that, I thought what was happening generally was more interesting. Definitely the gods part of this was cool. And I am excited because I looked up, after I finished this, the synopsis for the second book. So the second book is going to be following a different character. I'm pretty sure I know who. And I'm kind of glad that it's following a different character. And I kind of think I might like it better. So we'll see, I guess, what happens with that. So this was okay. I'm glad I've read it. I will be continuing the series, but at the same time, I was a little bit disappointed with it. Like, I feel like this had a lot of potential and it didn't quite deliver on that potential. So anyway, now that I've finished that, I can wrap this vlog up because it's now several days after I had planned to finish this, but I just decided that I don't care. Things take as long to read as they take. It's just what it is. Anyway, let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this vlog because I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments, or let me know if you've been reading anything exciting lately. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.